Let's start with a big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. It is a big moment in American politics, especially for the Democrat Party, as Joe Biden has now officially set up his November clash for the White House with sitting U.S. President Donald Trump. The former vice president wrapped up the Democratic convention with his acceptance speech, where he promised to end the season of darkness in America under Donald Trump. Now, Joe Biden touched upon several important issues during his convention address. He offered sharp criticism of Donald Trump over his fanning of racial hatred and also cozying up to dictators. We also saw an emotional side of the 77-year-old campaigner as he recalled personal tragedies, including the loss of his first wife and also his son, Joe Biden.
What we know about this president is if he's given 4 more years, he'll be what he's been for the last 4 years. A president who takes no responsibility, refuses to lead, blames others, cozies up to dictators, and fans the flames of hate and division. He'll wake up every day believing the job is all about him, never about you. One of the most important conversations I've had this entire campaign, it was with someone who was much too young to vote. I met with 6-year-old Gianna Floyd the day before her daddy, George Floyd, was laid to rest. She's an incredibly brave little girl. And I'll never forget it. When I leaned down to speak to her, she looked in my eyes and she said, and I quote, "Daddy changed the world. Daddy changed the world." Her words burrowed deep into my heart. Maybe George Floyd's murder was a breaking point. Maybe John Lewis is passing the inspiration. But however it's come to be, however it's happened, America's ready, in John's words, to lay down, quote, "the heavy burden of hate at last," and to end the hard work of rooting out our systemic racism. It will be the work of the next president to restore the promise of America to everyone. And I'm not going to have to do it alone, because I'll have a great vice president at my side, Senator Kamala Harris. She's a powerful voice for this nation. Her story is the American story. She knows about all the obstacles thrown in the way of so many in our country: women, black Americans, South Asian Americans, immigrants, the left out and the left behind. But she's overcome every obstacle she's ever faced. No one's been tougher on the big banks and on the gun lobby. No one's been tougher in calling out the current administration for its extremism, its failure to follow the law, its failure to simply tell the truth.
All right, so that was the nominee of the Democrats, Joe Biden, there making his campaign speech, accepting the nomination to run for the presidency for an election that is to be held in the month of November later this year. And to give us more perspective on the convention that has now ended, we're joined in by Jagrati Dave, who's joining us live from Washington, D.C. and has been looking at all the developments that are taking place there. Now, Jagrati, Joe Biden made a very important pitch. He said that it is time to end the season of darkness in America under Donald Trump. He's touched upon a whole wide variety of issues. Has he made the right pitch to take on Donald Trump?
Well, that is indeed the question. Joe Biden, in his speech today, was setting out his vision for America in his own words. Throughout the convention, we've heard other people telling the story of Joe Biden, about his character predominantly. There was a lot of focus on Joe Biden's character, his decency, his honesty, as his colleagues in the party have been portraying him. And today was a chance for Joe Biden to show those qualities, and for voters not just to hear about them, but to see them. And so one of the most most poignant moments in Biden's speech was when he talked directly to families and people who have lost loved ones because of the coronavirus pandemic, which was front and centre. An example that commentators have said of showing, not telling, showing the empathy that we've heard so much about. But the question is it enough? Is the character pitch that the Democrats have been going for and that Joe Biden has been going for by telling the story of his family and his values, is that what voters will look for when they are voting for their next president? Or will they look to issues and policies like the economy, which recent polls have been suggesting that voters actually might be trusting the Republicans and President Trump more on issues like the economy and jobs than the Democrats? So it remains to be seen whether this pitch has set the right note. Of course, within the Democratic Party, they believe that it is the right note, this refrain of the light that Joe Biden says he represents and the darkness and the negativity that they say that the Trump campaign and the current president represents. They view that as a very successful storytelling mechanism. But again, this is not an in-person convention, so as Joe Biden made his speech, there wasn't the traditional balloon drop at the end, there wasn't the applause from the crowd that would lift the speech at the right inflection points. It was virtual. He got the Zoom applause at the end. How many people are actually watching this online? How many people are watching this on television? Early research from the first few days of the conference of the convention suggested that the viewership was down in comparison to 2016. How much that will affect Joe Biden and the post-convention bounce that candidates traditionally get, that also remains to be seen.
Absolutely indeed. But the one person that we know who was actually watching this address by Joe Biden was President Trump himself, because he's put out a tweet, and I would like to quote him here. He said, in 47 years, Joe did none of the things that he now speaks of. He will never change, just words. Do you think President Trump, with the events that have now taken place in the last 6 months, with the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, with the economy having gone into a bit of a tailspin because of the lockdowns and also because of the race tensions that have erupted in the United States, will he be just a little bit more nervous taking on Joe Biden in the elections in November?
Well, these are all clearly issues that are front and centre of this election, and clearly they are playing on the Trump campaign's mind. And the president has not let his opponents, as traditionally they do, have the limelight during their convention and during the speech. Donald Trump has been tweeting, he's been holding rallies. He's been making policy announcements. He's not let the Democrats have their moment in the sunshine. Which does suggest that he is concerned, at least to make sure that he is front and centre as much as he possibly can. Recognition that he has not been able to hold rallies in the way that he would normally have done without the coronavirus pandemic, and that concerns that may have affected his campaigning. So yes, of course, all of these issues are of concern to the Trump campaign, and it'll be interesting to see how these play out in the minds of voters going ahead.
Absolutely indeed, and one big challenge is to actually get the voters to come out and vote in the month of November. Now, Joe Biden said that all elections are important, but this one is specifically so because it is a battle for the soul of the nation. How are the people of America looking at this election, considering the fact that it is going to be taking place in the middle of a pandemic?
Yes, that is a concern amongst state officials and amongst people who go out and vote. The Democrats are characterizing, as you rightly said, characterizing this election as an existential moment. Joe Biden said that this isn't just about votes for one time round. He said that this election will effectively characterize America going ahead. He suggested that the implications, the impact of this election will carry on and define America for a long time to come. So that is how the Democrats are seeing this. And the issue of voting, the issue of going out to vote, how Americans are going out to vote, is something else that played out throughout the convention. At the same time, you know, the Republicans and President Trump are claiming that the Democrats are trying to steal the election by this emphasis on mail-in voting, which President Trump is very much against, claiming that it leads to fraud, even though there is no evidence that mail-in voting is susceptible to widespread fraud. Studies do not show this. And the Democrats are making the case, accusing the president of trying to sabotage, in the words of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and others, sabotage the election by trying to make changes to the post office and to the efficiencies and the slowing down of deliveries in the post office to make it harder for Americans to vote. So there is a real battle going on about voting between both of the parties, which is of huge concern to officials and to people who are concerned about how they're going to vote and whether their vote, how they're going to actually achieve to vote for the candidate that they want.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much.